Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Ideas Sin. My name is Denise, and I am excited to present to you Phillip. Now, Phillip was my freediving instructor. So, hey, Phillip, how's it going?
How are you guys doing? How are you? This morning-ish,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yeah, it's still morning, 10 a.m. over here in Austin. Yeah. So, yeah, it was really cool to meet you. I mean, you and I just met through your class. Like you've been doing free diving for how long now? Like,
Myself personally, I've been, I guess, technically a free diver for going on 20, 25 years, something like that. So my
yeah.
early 20s, I'm 53 now. So my early 20s with a scuba background started kind of then, but I didn't actually know what free diving was back then. Like I said, close to 30 years ago. But So yeah, about that long. I've been an instructor going on about 5 years. I think
Yeah.
Patty just sent me a commemorative pin that I got my 5 year
Oh, they
pin from
did.
them. So
That's
I've been an
awesome.
actual instructor.
Nice. So are you gonna pin that to your wetsuit? Just
I
kidding.
think I put it on my bag because that would be such a good thing. But
Yeah.
yeah, I need a patch actually.
Oh, that would be good,
Hmm.
actually. Yeah, like one that you can stick on your wetsuit.
Yep.
Although I don't really know how that would work, if it would
Uh,
stay on or come off in the water. Something to invent, maybe.
yeah, that's another podcast.
I know, right? Oh, yeah. And so, I mean, like, what even interested you in free diving? Like, you were doing scuba diving before, and then you noted like you didn't really know what free diving was or anything like that.
Right.
But was it
So
that you didn't know, or was it not well known back then?
Well, to go like all the way back, I
Mm,
remember going to school as a little kid, and of course I'm 53, so I have a lot of most of my life without computers. So basically, for me to see the world, it was the National Geographic magazine. And I remember going into the school library one day and seeing the pyramids and seeing all kinds of stuff that, and groundhogs and, all meerkats and whatever. And they were just things. But I remember probably around 8 or 9 years old, opening up one of the National Geographics and seeing a manta ray. And that if you were to have an epiphany in your life, I remember that being a very visceral feeling of that was something I had never imagined. That was something that was completely outside of my realm at the time, this little kid just running around playing in parks and stuff. And then seeing the blue of the ocean, and then also at that time, Jacques Cousteau was everywhere. And so seeing all the underwater world was something that it was just like a moth to a flame. Anytime it was on TV or in a magazine, I was just on it. Um, and then as a kid, going down to the bottom of the deep end of the swimming pool and literally grabbing onto the drain um, just to see how long I could stay under there. And of course, the lifeguards thought I was stuck, so they would dive in, they would pull me out, they would kick me out of the pool for a week, and then as soon as I got back in, I was right back in there. But just feeling the water at that depth, and that was 12 foot, 10 to 12 foot as a kid. Um, and then going into all the lakes and rivers and streams we have here in Texas. And then probably, I want to say it was about 1993 when I got certified in scuba dive, 92, 93. Um, and then from there, uh, there were way more waterways to explore than I had time to basically go rent my equipment and go do this. So, but I always had a mask and a fin and snorkel. And so I just started going in these waterways uh, alone anytime I found some water. My background is in construction. So I traveled a lot around Texas building a lot of different things. And there's a lot of water in Texas. People don't realize that. A little bit less now because of the drought, but there's a lot of private streams, private uh, wells, even cenote type things like Jacob's Well and a bunch of different places. But again, I always had a mask and fin and snorkel, so I just started doing that. And then early 2000s, I started hearing about this guy named Umberto Pellizzati, a woman named Tanya Streeter, all these people that were doing this thing called freediving. And of course, being in Central Texas, landlocked where I am in Austin, um, they had been doing it for for years and years and years. But that was the first time I knew associated this word freediving with this activity, sport. Um, and then from then on, I just started to try to look for lessons and try to get as much knowledge as I could. And back then, there were only, you either had to go to Florida or California um, to take lessons, and all those lessons were just spearfishing lessons. So there wasn't a lot of safety involved back then. Now there's a lot of safety involved, but back then it was just guys who were teaching other guys how to spearfish. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to go and dive on the line and do long hangs and work on my breath. And that's kind of how the journey got me to find Patty. Patty was one of the most accessible agencies. There was a guy coming through Texas at the time teaching the level 1 and level 2 class. After I saw him finally, like I said, it was 6 years ago, so I started teaching 5 years ago. As soon as I took the first couple of classes with him, I followed him back to Florida and spent a lot of time with him and got my instructor rating. Came back and started teaching, basically. The long and skinny of it. So,
No, I think that that's great. And one of the thing well, I've had like a few questions pop up throughout your story, but I guess the first question was when you were younger, when you were a kid and you're just going
mhm.
down 10 to 12 feet, like did you know anything about equalization? Like did you feel that at all? Do you
No, I
remember that at
didn't.
all?
I the only time that I've ever really had equalization issues is when I have allergies. So pizza and bread are two of the things that are really bad for me. But I'm never going to stop eating pizza, so that's just what that is. But as a kid, going to the bottom of the deep end in the pool, I never had any issues. Never thought about anything. I don't know if I was equalizing back then as a kid. And then once I got into scuba diving, I don't remember having issues with equalization. And so the Frenzel equalization as opposed to the Valsalva, um, uh, I remember trying to, when I started pushing depth, like getting past the 80 to 100-foot range, I remember having issues at that point where an instructor was really instrumental in getting me past those barriers. But as a kid, I don't know. I don't know if you're just more pliable in your
Yeah.
in your ears, but yeah, going to the bottom of the deep end was never an issue. And then again, knowing what I know now as an instructor, that 12-foot mark is is kind of the mark where if you're not good with equalization or you have issues, you can usually get 10 to 12 feet. And anything beyond that, we need to start changing into the friend zone. But yeah, I never, not that I remember as a kid. So it just was always a water baby, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess that'll kind of potentially answer this next question, but I can totally see people saying, "Oh my gosh, you're like diving in the water or in potentially like unknown waters and things like
Mhm.
that. Like, weren't you ever scared of any types of fish or creatures in the water just like coming towards you?"
Not in Texas, because I mean,
Mm.
it depends on the waterways. Once you get more towards the Gulf and more towards those waters, there could be um, potential alligators or no, we have too many crocodiles. Um, but most of my diving has been in lakes and rivers and streams around Texas, and the biggest thing you're going to encounter there is going to be maybe a gar or some kind of a catfish, but everything else is just perch and bass and things like that. The occasional water moccasin, but they're usually on the on the top or in the trees. So
Oh, yeah.
that was also part of the excitement of not knowing what you're going to find, of just diving in this new body of water. And so just exploring a lot of the waterways around here, you just never know what you're going to see. You could see a giant snapping turtle the size of a manhole, or you could see a shopping cart. You just, you never know.
Yeah, all the random garbage that's at the bottom of
Exactly.
the water,
It
which
just
is
washes up and washes around. But yeah,
yeah.
I guess if anything, the biggest thing that might hurt you would be a snapping turtle if you get too close. But again,
Mm.
that's a Texas issue for the most part.
Yeah, and I mean, have you ever had any types of encounters with, any
No,
other wildlife that
when my wife and I went to the Maldives, there was a black tip shark that was around us, but it didn't really seem interested. Other than it swam by a couple times and was like, I don't really care about those guys. But other than that, I've been around, swam with manta rays and whale sharks, and um, never had any scary incidents. It's super, super exciting times underwater where you can't catch your breath and your breath holds are like 10 seconds because you're just so excited to be there. Um, but nothing that ever attacked or scared me or anything. And even the occasional spearfishing trip that I've gone on, I've never had any encounters with anything
yeah,
that would hurt me.
that's good.
Also, just in general, with if you're going in the water, that's their house. So that's kind of one of those things you just take upon yourself to go. If you see a bunch of sharks, it's like walking in the woods and you see a bunch of wolves or coyotes. That's you're in their home, so you need to do what you can to respect them. And if, most of the time, when somebody gets hurt, they're the ones that are kind of in the wrong place or doing the wrong thing. So try to
Yeah.
try to respect the environment as much as possible and try to teach that as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's something that a lot of people don't realize is like these like freak accidents or attacks. A lot of the times
Right,
it is on them usually. Like
right,
they're doing something to either
right.
provoke the animal or like get too close or something because most animals I have found they just want to back off and not even
Yeah,
deal
I
with
mean,
people or
again,
they're curious and
yeah,
looking.
snakes will do everything they can do to get away from you. They'll listen to the ground, they'll smell the air. As soon as they get a whiff of a human, they're gone. So if you stumble upon one, you may have just caught it sleeping, but for the most part, they'll get away from us. And all those stories about, a bison attacks a man in Yellowstone is like, well, stop trying to take a selfie with the bison. Because,
Stop trying to go
you know,
pet it.
it happens all the time. People,
Yeah.
like I said, it's one of those things. You respect others, creatures, people, whatever, and most likely you get that respect in return.
Mhm.
And try not
And
to wrestle sharks. So
yeah,
the key.
can you imagine that?
So, yeah.
Well, one thing that you mentioned as well is, when you go down there and you see a shark or you see other types of like marine life, like you can get excited. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of free diving, at least from the training that I've gotten from you, is like we go into almost like a meditative state to really
Mm-hmm.
calm everything down when
Right.
just right before diving. And so it's really interesting because you could be in that really nice, calm, meditative state. But if you go down and then all of a sudden something like excites you,
Mm-hmm.
like for you in that moment, what kind of happened? Like, did that shorten your dive? Did that affect you in any
Yeah,
kind of way?
and it happens all the time. I could be diving in Lake Travis where there's absolutely no chance of anything really attacking you. Most of the things are, about that size, maybe a bass or a perch or something. Um, and you, just because it's really dark and murky and cold, your brain is on high alert because you're in a foreign environment. And then you see a rock because you didn't know you were that close to the ground. And all of a sudden your adrenaline just spikes because it's just something in your face out of the ordinary. Um, as a scuba diver, you have time to troubleshoot. So you can sit and kind of, oh yeah, take my breath and relax back down. But as a free diver, once you get that adrenaline spike, it's really tough to bring that back down. Um, Other than just having training where you just go, oh, it's just a rock, but you still most likely will be on your ascent already because you're not down there for that long. And if something does scare you, you just go up. And so on the way up, to keep from sprinting to make the situation worse, I always just remind myself and I say in my head, you've done the step before, it was just a rock. Or you've done this step before, this is well within your training, just remember to kick. Just remember to kick, nice and slow, nice and slow. And that just keeps me from sprinting to the surface where I basically have a potential to black out if I have that adrenaline drop and then do that. So basically, it all just goes back to training and then just reminding myself, loosen your legs, kick slow, don't sprint, you're just a rock, or it's just a fish, or it's just a tree. But yeah, strangely enough, I've been more afraid more times in Lake Travis where there's nothing that can really hurt you as opposed to being in an open ocean because it's darker and it's colder and it's things just kind of pop into your view. If you have a flashlight, you can kind of peek around and there's like a tree there. And it's covered with moss and it's very eerie. Where in open ocean, you can see almost 100 meters sometimes around you. So it's a little more precarious mind-wise to dive in Lake Travis. So. But if you can dive good in Lake Travis, then calm yourself and everything else is a piece of cake.
Yeah. And I guess that's like another factor too, is you noted that you would be diving down to like 80 or 100 feet. I'm assuming like light again begins to disappear at that point and it gets darker. So is that something else that you had to mentally work through to be like, okay, yes, it's getting darker, but I'm still good. And you're just focused and you just kind of recalm yourself? Or what is it even like down that deep when you're
So
free
yeah,
diving?
and right now there were times where you could get almost 50 to 55 meters in Lake Travis, in almost 60 meters, and 60 meters is 200 feet. Right now, because of the long drought we've had for the last couple of years, we're only at around probably 32 meters, so around 120 feet or so. But anything around 60 to 80 feet in Lake Travis, because it does have a lot of algae in it, the light disappears really, really quickly. And it also gets cold. There's a really hard thermocline, and it fluctuates between 50 and 80 feet. But it could be almost 92 degrees on the surface Fahrenheit, and then the bottom at 100 feet could be in the 50s. So you could literally be sitting there at almost 45 to 50 degrees at 100 feet or 120 and have to just move your hands if you're just doing a long hang sitting on the line. And at that depth, it's absolutely pitch black. Like if you went into a closet, put a towel under the door, turned off the light, and put a bandana around your face, that's how dark it is. Anything beyond around 80 to 100 feet in Lake Travis. So a lot of times we wear little flashlights so that we can actually see the line. We're also attached to the line with a lanyard, so at no time can you get lost or do anything like that. But it does take a lot of training and a lot of mental fortitude to purposefully put yourself in that situation and then remain calm. But that's one of the allures of freediving, is that, like taking a cold bath or going on a long run or doing a triathlon or something, you're purposefully engaging your body to do these really stressful things. And then you're able to dial that back so that the next time, let's say something goes wrong at work, yeah, but I'm not going to die. So
Yeah.
to have that
Yeah.
extreme, to be able to dial that back, oh yeah, sure, okay, so it'll be a little late, let's just get it done and do it. So
Yeah.
the transfer of what we gain in freediving by going into the dark and going into the cold and getting that type of anxiety and getting that type of control over that anxiety, it really, really transfers. And so being in that dark and being in that cold, like I said, that light, it does disappear, no matter where you're diving in Lake Travis. In the open ocean, it's different. In the cenotes in Mexico, it's different. There were some cenotes we would drop the line to 30 meters and you could still see the plate. So at 100 feet, you literally can still
Mm.
see the bottom plate, and see the dive line and watch your diver go all the way down and back. And you can see them clear as day. But in Lake Travis, anything, once a person takes off, once they're past, you know, 10 feet, for the most part, they're gone. You just can't see them. And so,
Yeah.
like you were saying, the light it just starts to dissipate really, really quickly after that.
Yeah. And so I know sound travels very well underwater. At that point, like, can you hear anything when you're down that
Yeah, you
deep?
do. You do hear boats as they're going by. Sometimes, depending on where we're diving, there's a water intake somewhere. I don't know where it is, but you can hear the mechanics of it just going jung 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 jung, and that reverberates throughout the water really far. The coolest thing that I found, and I didn't get this until a lot later, is that along with the mammalian dive reflex that's kicking in, your heart rate starts to slow down as you're diving. Peripheral vasoconstriction, all these things are happening, but your heart rate really, really slows down. And so when you're at 100, and the way the water reverberates and the way that your body is made of water and the sound in your body, you can hear your heart rate really, really slow down. So you can be sitting in the dark, holding onto a dive line, in 50-degree water and just hear boom,
Hmm.
boom, boom, and your heart rate's, probably in the low 30s, if not high 20s.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
and
Yeah, that's
so,
pretty low.
yeah, and it's because, again, there's a lot of physical things that are happening with the mammalian dive reflex and physiology wise and biology wise. But if you do a lot of cardio, you usually have a lower heart rate in general, and then once peripheral vasoconstriction starts happening, your blood doesn't have to go all the way to your fingers and toes, and the constriction of the water starts to squeeze your arms and legs, and basically it just brings all the blood to your core, your head, your heart, and your lungs, and so your heart doesn't have to push blood all the way to your fingers and toes, so it can actually slow down. And so when you're doing a really long hang, like sitting at 100 feet for 20 seconds or 30 seconds, you can really, really, really get in tune with your heart rate and just hear it just dropping. And that's really fun when that happens. And then,
Yeah.
a fish will swim through your flashlight, yeah, and then you freak out. And then
You're
you're
like,
back
"Oh,
up to
shit, I gotta go up."
120. Yeah.
No, that's really cool. I mean, and just thinking about, like, obviously I haven't gone down that deep, but just thinking about it too is when you're down there, you're literally just alone with yourself. And a
Yeah.
lot of it is like such a mental game. So I guess for I don't know if you've done like a float tank or anything before, but that's like complete sensory deprivation. So for anybody who's like potentially even curious to be like, well, what is potential like pitch black, like darkness? It's like you can go in there and you're lying in water that has a lot of salt in it. So you're like pretty buoyant. And
Right.
you just literally lie there for like 30 minutes or an hour or longer, and you just connect to everything. Like you can connect to your body, but especially like your mind, especially if you're like opening your eyes up. I think that's the
Right.
other thing too. Um, the other question that I'm kind of leading up to is when I've done float tank, I've done it a few times where the first few times I was like, "Oh my god, like I'm going crazy because my mind's thinking of all these crazy things that are going to happen." And so I'm like working through my fears. And then afterwards, I was like, okay, yeah, I've done this before. I know nothing's here. And then I'm literally just lying there and chilling out. And I keep my eyes open. Other times I close my eyes, other times I open my eyes. But it's like you adapt to the darkness, or sometimes like you just have like these visual effects kicking in. Does
Right.
that ever happen when you're down in the water because it's so black and you've been down there for a decent
It
amount of
does.
time?
Yeah. So those are essentially kind of like survival things where your brain because it always has activity and it's built to keep going. Once it doesn't have input, it'll just start making stuff up.
Mm.
And so when you are down there, one of the keys and the goals to freediving is to try to control your mind, because you can very easily get disoriented, for one thing, because we dive basically head down, and that's disorienting in the water. But because your mind is on high alert, and then you have zero input as far as um, anything other than the pressure of the water on your body, and then the cold sensation, but you have really little hearing other than your heartbeat, and then nothing visually. So your brain goes on overload to try to compensate and start filling in the blanks of, okay, well, what are we doing now, and what's going on here, and do you remember that fight that you didn't have, and let's pretend like that's happening now, and all that stuff that starts
Yeah.
coming in, and that's where the control comes in, because your brain, it doesn't know what to do with no information. And so that's where the training comes in, and that's where the peace comes in, because you can just keep reminding yourself, I'm purposefully doing this. This is what I'm doing. This is how I'm doing it. This is comfortable. This is high and intense, but at the same time, it's comforting because I'm under my own control and I'm purposefully making this happen. I've never been in a float tank before, but I've heard that analogy. A lot of people associate those things. I know some divers that have done both. Um, it depends on their preference, but I would assume that's what it feels like, because you are a sense, in a sense, in a deprivation tank. You have very little senses coming in, but that's, and unfortunately, we're in that state where we have phones and TVs and radios and all these things, and there's constantly stuff coming into our brains 24 hours a day. And so to be quiet, your brain is like, I don't like this. I don't know what to do with this information. I can process fear coming at me at the TV, and I can process all these other things because that has become normal. But to have nothing, that's different for our brains, and we need to sit in nature, whether it's underwater or in the woods, and just not have that kind of stimulus. Our brains, doctors have now been prescribing movement and nature as opposed to medicine. There's a tremendous amount of research in the past 20 years that, depression, anxiety, all of these 21st century diseases, so to speak, and ailments and mental disorders, movement and nature are two of the highest things, best things that we can do, with actually more better outcomes than just medicine. And so, like I said, purposefully going out and stressing your body out, it helps. It does.
Mm-hmm.
Drama is a different story. So, people always talk about that. So drama is completely separate from what I'm talking about. But physical stress, our bodies really do appreciate physical stress. But yeah, this giving your brain a chance to be quiet and decipher nothing is not something we get a lot of time with.
Yeah. And would you say that were you introduced into like meditation mindfulness at the very beginning of your journey with free diving and scuba diving, or
No,
was this something you learned like way after that you then started to
no,
work
way
on and
after. It
changing?
was, yeah. So I was, again, freediving 20 years ago, and meditation and yoga and a lot of the things that you see associated with freediving. That, in my view of freediving early on, I didn't know that was part of it. I just saw people swimming with big long fins, and that was it, and holding their breath for a really long time. It wasn't until I started trying to actually push depth. And one of the things that you do when you start pushing depth is one of the things that happens is once you get to a certain depth, and it can happen to somebody at 10 feet and it could happen to somebody at 200 feet, the exact same thing happens. One, you either have a problem with equalization or you have a problem with your brain. And so if your brain is not going to allow you to get past that depth because of the sensations on your body, or your mind can't get wrapped around what you're asking your body to do, you get the fight or flight. So a lot of times you have that fear, you turn around and you sprint to the surface. It's a natural occurrence. That's what our bodies are supposed to do, right? That's supposed to happen. We're supposed to have fear. But when you're pushing depth, once you associate fear and turning around in the same instant, then every single time you feel that feeling, you're going to turn around and run away. So when you're pushing depth, what I would start doing is I would feel that anxiety and feel the fear, feel the pressure on my body. Equalization was good. So I knew it wasn't anything stopping me mechanically speaking, that it was just my brain. So I would hold on to the line, turn myself head up, and literally just sit in that feeling, in that fear, and just sit as long as I could so that I wouldn't associate running away and that feeling of fear in the same time. And then eventually my body would get used to, let's say, 60 feet. And I'd go, okay. And then I would just drop myself down like maybe a foot, like 6 inches to a foot, just so I know mentally I pushed myself, right? Regardless if it was 20 feet or 6 inches. I made myself, I overcame that little bit, and I allowed myself to go farther. And then I go back up and I have a sense of accomplishment that I felt the feeling, I didn't run away, and I went farther. And so the next time my brain is like, okay, well, that didn't kill you. So let's try that again. And from that, I started to do those hangs. I wasn't trying to meditate. I wasn't trying to get anything done other than not allow myself to run away when I was scared. And then I started to enjoy doing the hangs. So I started doing shorter dives as far as distance goes and depth, and doing longer breath holds and longer hangs. So I would do like a 2-minute dive to 60 feet, like 20 meters. And just literally just sit there for like a minute and just sit and just hang. And that's when I really started to understand, oh, that's what that is. That's what, like when you get on a motorcycle, as soon as you turn it on, you find that zen. When you are doing your yoga, you find that peace. When you meditate. So it takes different time periods for different people to reach that point. And you don't find it every time. It's like anything. Sometimes I look forward to a swim. Sometimes I don't. Sometimes I look forward to a run. Sometimes I don't. Actually, most times I don't. But after enduring, it's
Yeah.
always really nice. But free diving, I found it a lot more in those moments where I was allowing myself to just sit in the discomfort and just release my body and then just let it go. And that's when I started to realize that's what they're talking about in free diving. That's what that peaceful and mindfulness is, and that's what that means. But that wasn't anywhere close to the beginning of my journey. That probably didn't happen up until about maybe 10 years ago, when I started to realize that was, because like any person, I just want to hold my breath for a long time and go really deep, right? And that's not the goal, because it's not how long you can hold your breath that matters. It's how long can you make one breath last. That's what we're trying to do. And the only way to do that is to calm this down. And so that's one of the things that kind of bothers me, because most people, oh, you're a free diver? How deep have you gone? How long can you hold your breath? Those metrics, though, they shouldn't matter, because you could be just as calm at 10 feet as you could at 200 feet. Again, it's more about how long you can make that one breath last. But that came way late in my journey, so to speak.
And do you think that as soon as you started practicing those techniques, did you see a significant increase in skill
Absolutely.
afterwards? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Once, because I would be sitting there, sprinting down and hanging onto the line and just, hold on, staring at my computer the whole time and just pushing myself. And once I started to realize, just let go. Right? I like literally took off my computer. Actually, I had an instructor one time because he was watching me as we were going down, and he said, "Hey, let me see your wrist." And he goes, "Oh, that's a nice computer." And he took it off my wrist, and I thought he was going to do something to it, and he literally just tossed it up on a dock. And I was like, "Well, I'm glad you got good aim, but what is going on?" He goes, "Can you look at me while we're doing this and stop looking at your wrist?" And that was the first time that I realized, shoved in my face, that you're way more concerned about numbers than you are trying to listen to this and listen to this. And so once I started to associate doing those long hangs and feeling my body just melt into the water and literally just dissipate like a drop of dye in a bowl of water, that's when I would pop up from a dive, not looking at my computer at all. And a normal dive to 100 would be, a minute and 30 seconds or a minute and 45. And that would be sprinting all the way down and sprinting all the way back up, where I would do this super relaxed dive and get back up, and it'd be like, almost 2.5 minutes. And I didn't look at my computer the entire time. And sometimes not till I got home, where I was downloading, and I was like, holy crap, that was almost a 2.5 minute dive, like 2:27 or something like that. But that only comes with just letting go of all the numbers, all the depth, and all the everything, and just letting that just relax. And you start, for me, it starts in my jaw. Once I start clenching my jaw, then I know something's going wrong. And so, but yeah, it makes a huge difference. So one of the sayings is, with relaxation comes depth, and with relaxation comes equalization. So if your mind is not relaxed, it's going to start tension everywhere. And all those little tiny muscles you're trying to use to equalize correctly, if your jaw is tight, if your shoulders are tight, and your chest is tight, it's hard to equalize. And everything just has to be nice and fluid as you're going down. And again, the more rigid you are, the more you're going to feel the effects of the water on your body. That's why there's a lot of yoga and stretching associated with freediving, because the more pliable you are, the less you're going to be resistant to the pressure of the water. Therefore, the less the pressure of the water is going to affect you, and the less synapses are going to be firing that you're in trouble, because you're just pliable and loose in the water. And so you're not going to have all these alarms going off. Yeah, that's where a lot of just the constant repetition of going up and going down and going up and going down comes into play.
And I know we've mentioned this a few times, but I just realized, like, people might not actually know what equalization means. Are you able to explain that a little bit, and, how it affects your free diving or even
Right.
scuba diving? Because there's like the two methods. So some
Yeah,
are.
and so with scuba, you have a tank of air on your back, and that allows you to equalize freely using whichever method you want. As free divers, we don't have the luxury of being able to breathe underwater. We're only taking the one breath that we took right before we left the surface. So we have to move air around that's basically getting compressed. So our lungs get compressed, our throat gets compressed, the air in our mouth and the air in our sinuses gets compressed. When the air in our sinuses and eustachian tube gets compressed, it starts to pull our eardrums in, because the airspace is getting smaller. And so what we do is we equalize the pressure by either pinching our nose, having a nose clip, or doing some kind of no hands equalization. But essentially, we're moving the air from our mouth into our eustachian tubes to push our eardrum back out so that it can not get stretched. So when people feel that feeling of going, ow, it hurts in my head, essentially, most of the time that's what it is. It's their eardrum is getting pulled and stretched. And so pushing the air up through your sinuses into your eustachian tubes, that's the equalization that we're trying to do. We're trying to equalize the pressure so that it doesn't hurt our eardrums. And there's a few different techniques that people use. Some people use no hands, but essentially we're using what we call the Frenzel technique, because the Valsalva is when you push with your diaphragm and push the air from your lungs up through your throat into your mouth to do all of But as freedivers, our lungs, we don't have access to our lungs after a certain depth because our throat is the airspace, our lungs are airspace, everything's getting really small. So to push air, we actually have to use the Frenzel technique, which is basically using the back of our tongue like a piston in the back of our mouth to basically push the air up so that it pushes our eardrums back out. Long and short, that's basically what equalization is. And without equalization, you can't dive, essentially. You're limited to, if you don't equalize at all, maybe 3 to 5 feet, period. If you're on the Valsalva, which is the abdomen push, you're limited to about 12 feet. If you can master the Frenzel technique and some sort of a mouth fill, you can go as long as your breath will hold you. Right now, I think one of the records, Alexei Molchanov's got 133 meters at this point. You know, it's what, almost 430 feet, 450. I don't know the math right off the bat, but you know, and that's really far down.
Yeah.
Yeah, and people have gone, and that's under his own power. So there's other people that have gone close to just over 900 feet, but they're doing a very different type of free diving. Technically, it's called no limits, where they hold onto a sled, so they're not actually swimming down.
Oh,
But that's a different kind. That's not what we're doing as far as free diving. So they literally hang onto a sled and then hang onto a balloon that they fill up with air that shoots them back up to the surface. So that's a whole different kind of stuff. But they're still equalizing. They're still having to move air to keep their eardrums intact.
yeah. I mean, would you ever aspire to go down past 80? Well, actually, is 80, 100 your max? Like, would you ever want to go down
No,
further?
right now
Or
I
have
would
you?
say what was my last max was 47 meters. I don't know what, I don't have the map. That's where 47 meters is. So not as far as elites go, and as far as a lot of freedivers, that's not especially deep. We're actually limited here in Lake Travis to around 30 to 32 meters. Um, so in order to get depth, we actually have to travel to Mexico or go someplace else. Like the cenotes, you can go, 90 to 100 meters. But my personal best is, I want to say it was 47 meters. Um, that was a few years ago, but I have a 19-month-old baby girl, Sylvia, and then a son, Joaquin, who just turned 4 years old yesterday. Um, and they kind of, having kids kind of has a way of distilling life to basically just the essence of what is important. And pushing depth has really stopped being important to me. The biggest thing that I have concentrated on over the past couple of years anyway has just been safety. So I've had a couple other certifications from different agencies. So I essentially have three different certifications, three different agencies, and then working on a fourth. And the reason to get so many certifications is basically I'm really interested in all the different techniques of safety that each school teaches. Um, but as far as pushing depth, maybe when they get older, but at this time, teaching the level 1 and level 2 classes are my priority. And then, of course, my wife and my kids are my number one priorities. Being able to push depth and train that, you have to put a lot of time in to do that. Like you would do anything if you're going on a Ironman triathlon. You've got to put a lot of time in the water and a lot of time on the road. And the only time to really do that is when my friends are not working, and that's on weekends. But that's my time with the kids, so that's where my energy and my choices go. They still go diving. They borrow my equipment, but pushing depth right now is not something that I really want to do. But being safe and teaching safety is my number one priority.
Yeah. And that is something that you noted during our course as well, is that you really prioritize safety. And we've already noted a few things like a blackout, for example, or obviously like your eardrums not being able to equalize. I know some people might be thinking the bends as well.
Mhm.
But like, what are the, would you say those are the primary major safety concerns that you have encountered or that you would ever deal with in free diving, aside from maybe like the
So,
potential shopping cart attack?
right. So basically, the short answer to the bends is it is possible for freedivers to get the bends. It's highly unlikely that recreational freedivers will get the bends. For one, we're not spending a tremendous amount of time. I mean, we're talking seconds underwater, and we're not breathing compressed air. We're not spending, 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at those depths. There's a lot more science involved as far as getting the bends, but again, for your average recreational spearfisher and freediver, it's highly unlikely that you would get the bends. There's a lot more to it than that, but for the most part, that's there. Blackouts are the main things that we worry about and work on. Um, if you have proper safety in place, most of the time a blackout is very manageable. So if you've ever seen competitions, it's very likely that 1 in 10 divers are going to black out when you're watching a competition. And depending on the weather conditions, you can have a current at 100 meters, and these guys are going, to 120 meters, and or have a current at 80 meters. Um, and they're having to fight a lot more than they thought they were going to. So when they come up, they black out. So blackouts could be more common during some competitions than others. But if you watch the competitions and know how a person actually blacks out, a blackout is very manageable. That's one of the things that we really don't train to that point when I'm out with our dive buddies. I have been lightheaded a few times, but I've never personally blacked out in the water. Done it sitting on the couch before. Don't tell my wife. But going out there and doing training, we try to train not to that point. Drowning is very, very different. That is a completely different subject and situation. That's when water actually gets into your body, into your lungs. But a blackout, your body is actually pretty good at dealing with it and what it does as far as the mechanisms and how it takes care of yourself. It locks down your throat, locks down your jaws. Never dive with a snorkel in your mouth. If you do, that's a potential waterway. But if you are not diving alone and your buddies know what to do, if you were to black out, 99% of the time, a blackout is not an issue because, again, they're very manageable if they're caught in time and you know what to do. And that's why taking a class is really important. I know a lot of people do a lot of online classes and take online safety and do a lot of stuff like that. And knowledge is power. But unless you actually practice these safety techniques, it's really hard to grasp what it feels like to actually pull somebody up with your elbows and having your hands on their head, up 10 meters or 20 meters or even 30 meters. And that's really what's most important. You have to practice these things to be safe. But just basic blackouts are number one as far as our concentration and safety goes. And most of the time, they're going to happen, if not on the surface. There's more of a chance that it's going to happen on the surface after you start breathing than it will at depth. There's a little bit of a chance, in the shallow water blackouts, what they call. But for the most part, if you're training correctly and with the right group of people, if there were to be a blackout, most likely it's going to be on the surface. And so that's where you kind of concentrate a lot of our safety techniques and manpower, so to speak.
And one of the things that I was surprised about, but also really happy to learn was just even the breath technique. Like in the course you had said, like don't do the Wim Hof breathing,
Right.
like we were practicing like deeper, slow inhalations versus like the Wim Hof hyperventilation
Right.
type of breathing. But do you think like you can explain that difference a little more? Because I think people might not necessarily
Right.
understand that.
Yeah, I have quite a few people that come through my classes that are coming from a workout background, either CrossFit, ice baths and all kinds of backgrounds. Um, and the Wim Hof technique, it's a viable technique. It does work. I've gone through it. I've read, basically, there's 3 different books that I've read about him. Scott Carney is the guy that actually wrote the book, What Does Not Kill Us. Um, and he wrote that book. He actually went to go to Wim Hof to prove him wrong as a charlatan. But through this book, he finds out that, wow, this stuff actually works. And so I don't want to disparage or say anything negative about that technique, because it is a viable technique. However, its main purpose is hyperventilation. One of the things that hyperventilation does is it gets rid of a lot of CO2 in our system. CO2 is our alarm system. So if we don't have CO2, we don't get anxiety. We don't get a lot of red flags in our system to tell us to breathe. That's very important as a freediver, because if I don't have a red flag that says, oh, you need to kick the abdomen in, and your abdomen needs to start going, you need to start going, oh, I need to breathe. If I don't have enough CO2, my body's not going to tell me to breathe. If I'm underwater, I could literally just black out with no warning signs. So the Wim Hof technique, although it is a viable technique on dry land, it's never to be used in the water, because I need to train my body to the level of CO2, not get rid of the CO2. And so we do a lot of other breathing where we're trying to slow everything down, getting used to the levels of CO2 and training our tolerance to CO2. So when we take a 2-second breath hold in and pause and have this nice long 10 to 12 second exhale and do that 3 or 4 times, it's going to raise my shoulders. It's going to open up my chest. It's going to get me out of the everyday clavicle breathing where we just kind of sit at our desk or sit in our car and just kind of, right? Because our body knows what it needs to do. Just like when we're sleeping, we're trying to get more to that state where our body basically just takes over our breathing. So to get ourselves out of that clavicle breathing where we're just sitting at our desk or doing whatever, we start doing a little bit more of an exaggerated breath, 2 seconds in, a little bit of a pause, 2 seconds in, and we keep that going for about 4 or 5 breaths. And then I start trying to even that out where the 2-second breath turns into a 3 to 4 second breath in, and the exhale going from a 10 to 12 second exhale goes to an 8 to 6 second exhale. Then eventually it's about a 4 to 5 second inhale, 4 to 5 second exhale. So you're basically just trying to get your body to do what it needs to do. So if you've ever been next to somebody who's asleep, annoyingly so, they're asleep and you're not, but you can watch a baby sleep, you can watch a dog sleep, you can watch your partner sleep, and their body, before you get into REM sleep, because REM sleep is kind of like, and you're just kind of all over it. But especially a dog, they'll start doing all kinds of craziness. But there's an area where your body just ebbs and flows all by itself. It'll just, and it has these really good, long, relaxing pauses in between the breath. And so once you start getting yourself out of your everyday clavicle breathing, where it's just kind of mindless, by doing the 2 seconds in, 10 seconds out, and then allow your breath to even out by keeping your brain occupied with some meditation or a body scan or doing some other things, then your body just does what it needs to do. But it's a process. So one of those things that people always go, well, how long can you hold your breath? I'm like, right now, probably 30 seconds to 45 seconds, maybe a minute. Right? But if I were to spend 4 or 5 minutes doing some breathing, working on my brain, slowing everything down, on average 3 to 4 minutes. If I was to have a whole morning before the kids get up, before the dog gets up, before the wife gets up, before coffee, before life, I'm in the 4.5 to 5 minute range. I'm sitting on the couch, of course. But it takes a process. You can't just jump into a giant breath hold like that. But like I said, for the most part, we all just kind of walk around, just really shallow upper chest upper chest breathing. But that's one of those things that we work on in the classes, and it's a little bit difficult to do when you're watching a lesson on a pre-recorded lesson online where that person can't look at you personally. Okay, drop your shoulders a little bit and relax your hands a little bit because you're sitting there like this. That's not a relaxed person. And so walking around the class and talking to people, okay, relax your shoulders, and those are those type of things that you get in the class where you may not get in an online session, pre-recorded online session. But yeah, breathing. I just gave my mother-in-law the book Breath. So if you haven't read Breath, go read Breath. It's essential for anybody, whether you're an athlete or not. If you have snoring issues or breathing problems or allergies, all kinds of stuff, go read that book. So people always ask, what kind of freediving books? I'm like, Breath. Just read the book Breath. And that's the beginning for anything. If you want to be a triathlete, read the book Breath. If you want to be a truck driver, read the book Breath. If you want to be alive in this world, read the book Breath. And then go off to your individual specificity of things. But yeah, back to the original subject, hyperventilation is not to be done and associated with freediving. They're not good together.
Yeah. And it's true. I think about it and it's like your lungs, they're like muscles. It's when you go to do any other sport, you go and you kind of warm up, you do your stretches, you do what you have to do. And when you're getting
Right.
into breath work, it's the same thing. Like you're
Yeah.
warming up your lungs and you're slowly being able to expand them out more.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it does make sense. And to your point, like I've experienced that myself with pranayama. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I've done that practice, I'll start and I'm like, oh man, like I have really like tight breathing. Like I'm not
Right.
really
You're
that
like, this
open,
session
but
is going
it's
to suck.
yeah,
Right. And then you get
exactly.
into it. And
Yeah, and you warm up and you're like, "Oh, okay, now I can like hold my breath." And then it's like we go through like 2 or 3 cycles depending on like what the goal is, but we'll do 2, 3, 4 cycles even and as each cycle increases, it's like, "Wow, I can hold my breath longer. I feel it more and you just relax so much more." And that's like a whole other different experience too.
Mhm.
But it's really nice, and it is something that a lot of people don't think about is how are you breathing every single day? Like, how often do you stop to be like, okay, how am I breathing? Am I breathing very shallow? Am I breathing through my mouth? Am I breathing through my nose? I mean, as you were going through those breath exercises, a lot of the times you were inhaling through your mouth and then slowly exhaling through your
Mhm.
mouth as well.
Mhm.
Do you ever switch and do nose inhalations and exhalations, or, you go back and forth between nose and mouth inhalation,
So
exhalations?
as a free diver, a lot of times we are wearing a mask. So there is a lot of mouth breathing. Whenever I'm sitting on the couch or teaching classes, I try to breathe through my nose as much as possible, 100% of the time, if possible. I breathe through my mouth a lot of times during classes because it's louder. So I can't explain to somebody by going, okay, now let's do the breath.
Mhm.
Right? There's no noise there. They can't tell what I'm doing other than my shoulders going up or my back or whatever's going on. So, right, it's very audible. It's very loud. So a lot of times when I'm teaching classes, I do a lot of mouth breathing for that reason. When I'm doing it myself, uh, usually I'll start out with 2 or 3 breaths, maybe 5 breaths, in through my nose, out through my mouth. Um, there, there has been some research that talks about the sound of exhaling through your mouth by getting that really slow hissing sound, whether you're stopping it with your lips, pursed lips, or you're stopping it with your tongue. That's relaxing. So sometimes if I'm having a hard time, what I call breaking loose or just kind of shaking loose, I'll start exhaling through my mouth to get that audible sound to remind myself that, okay, that's what we're doing. Um, But in that book, Breath, and a lot of research before and after that, they talk about how important it is to breathe 100% through your nose. So I try to do that as much as possible. Again, with the mask on freediving, a lot of times I'll literally just hold it up like that until my last 2 or 3 breaths and then drop it down and then breathe through my mouth. But for the most part, I try to do as much as I can through my nose.
And so one other thing that I realized as well, um, so it seems like as soon as you started diving into this a lot more, you're not only teaching how to free dive, but you're also teaching breath work and mindfulness and meditation type of practices. Did you ever think that you would get into teaching in this activity or hobby that you've taken on?
Not in this way. So I got into construction in my early 20s, and then basically spent the next 27 to 30 years in construction. I'm a realtor in my day job. My wife and I are realtors. Um, and through that time, I always took different paths to just do different things. But I was a guitar teacher for a little while, an art teacher for a little while at elementary school. And then I taught construction to guys in clean coming back from Iraq and job skills. And then was a culinary teacher in juvenile detention for 3 years, I think. Um, and through all that, I was just teaching what I knew. I didn't think I was, really imparting any knowledge, so to speak, other than this is how you hold a saw, or this is how you cook a sauce, or anything like that. Until I started working with the adult programs and the juvenile detention programs, that a lot of times the activity is just a side piece of what these people are actually looking for or actually need. I can teach somebody how to hold a saw, or I can teach somebody how to make pasta from scratch, but to impart the humanity of when you build something, you're giving of yourself. When you cook something, you're giving of yourself. And through all that, I realized that when somebody asks a question, it's a very vulnerable place to be. Like when I was growing up in construction in the early '90s, there was a lot of not fun people to be around. You can, unfortunately, just use your imagination on guys on the construction site. I was dealing with Vietnam vets, a lot of substance abuse people, and when you're around a lot of guys like that, you get berated for not knowing something. So somebody's like, "Why are you so stupid? How do you not know this?" I'm like, "How am I stupid for not knowing something?" And so I never got mad. I never remember being mad in those situations. I always had a puzzling feeling like, why, how am I the dumb one for asking a question? And so I've always taken that to heart. And once I got the opportunity to start teaching construction classes to people looking for job skills that are, out of, out of the penitentiary, or actually teaching in juvenile detention, to give these guys this information in a very open way. Because again, and just speaking from my experience, for a man to ask a man something, it's hard to do in general. Men aren't really allowed to have emotions, essentially. And so to be able to be a teacher and have somebody ask you something, that's a very vulnerable place that they're putting themselves in. So if I'm like, well, how are you so dumb that you don't know this? Okay, let me go ahead and show you. Now I've just completely cut them off. Right? They're never going to ask a question again, or they're going to associate a completely crap feeling with this thing. And so they may not want to cook for themselves, or they may not want to do this. And it has nothing to do with the fact that they don't like cooking or building. They have just had this really bad association with this instructor. I also had some teachers in school when I was in grade school that I was considered the dumb kid, and put in special trailers and basically just play checkers all day with the other kids in the course. I didn't particularly think I was dumb, but I never understood berating somebody for not knowing something. And so teaching all these different things, I've realized over time, and again, probably within the past 10 years, there's way more emphasis and importance that I could put on the one-to-one eye contact when somebody asks me a question, rather than just throwing out a flippant answer. And sometimes questions come out of fear, especially in freediving. I've had, in a few different situations, people come into my class that actually have trauma associated with water in their past. And so I've had to pull them aside and say, is there something else going on? Why do you want to do this? And they're like, oh, I just love water. And I go, it doesn't seem like you do.
Hmm.
So if there's something else that we need to work on, that's fine. But I can tell by your body language. I can tell by your resistance. There's something else that's going on. And learning those skills and techniques to read somebody's body language and know that when certain people are asking a question, I need to literally drop everything in my brain and not make it about the lesson and really look at them and focus on them and say, here is the answer. And we can take this question as far as you want. Because they really, really need that moment to basically just be frictionless. Um, and so that just comes with time and people if you're open to doing that. So learning how to communicate and work with people in classes, that's not something that I set out to do. I had no idea that I would be reading books on psychology and physiology and biology and just like a sponge these past few years, just reading everything that I can, open water swimming, science fiction, just because our brains and our bodies are so intricate. And there's so many things that we store in our bodies. And to know that I have impacted some people in a very positive way because of teaching them how to use a saw in a construction class or make pasta from scratch. To see a smile on a kid's face that literally didn't know how to fry an egg in juvenile detention and being told that he was just a completely horrible person. And then having people come to me in freediving and seeing some of that pain coming up, and then seeing it kind of wash away once it really starts to basically just dissipate into the water. In no way that I think this was a part of it, part of my journey. And I've had people thank me for, thank you so much for doing this and for doing that. And I'm like, as an instructor, the good ones that I've had literally just opened the door and said, I'm just showing you a mirror. It's already there. I didn't do anything. That's just you already. And so it's if I can be a part of that and a channel for that, that's a beautiful thing. Not in any way something that I thought was going to happen, planned on happening, went into, hoping to, or anything like that. It's just kind of working that way. So just
Hmm.
like anybody with a chance, just hanging on and taking it for what I can.
Yeah. And were there ever moments when you wanted to dive out into a different activity or a hobby where you did receive external criticism and where people were like, why are you doing this? And why are you doing that? And it actually did affect you a bit. And you were like, well, maybe I shouldn't do this. And then, maybe you either didn't pursue it or maybe you somehow changed your mind and you did go after it. But what was that like for you?
There, I've always been a person to instead of think, oh, I wish I could do that. I've always been the person to go, how can I do that? And so I've always done a bunch of different things. And like I mentioned before, growing up in construction with construction friends, essentially just a bunch of, redneck dudes and construction guys. Um, Essentially, drinking was all we used to do. So I have a background of a lot of drinking, used to smoke cigarettes, and basically just 4, 5, 6 nights out of the week, it was just beers after work. Um, and then getting into martial arts, I actually had to wrestle some of my friends because they're like, I don't think you know how to do that stuff. And that's where I kind of started to not drink so much because I couldn't show up at the martial arts studio and being hungover. So once I started to do that, people started to go, well, what, you're not going to drink with us now? You're too good for drinking with us? You think you're better than us? I'm like, first of all, how do you know what I think? You don't know what I think because you're not me. And second of all, I'm your friend. At least I thought. But the fact that I'm not going to drink with you, that makes me a different person now, you know. And so that's where some of the split with old friends started to happen when you just kind of follow not even a passion, but just a thought or an idea and go, oh, that shiny thing over there seems fun. Let me do that now. And then some people that are not open to those situations for whatever reason, they don't like it because you're changing um, the situation, right? I don't feel like I've personally changed into a different person. I think I'm the same person that I was looking in the National Geographics and seeing the manta rays and Jacques Cousteau at 9 years old. But my activities have definitely changed. And again, growing up with a party background, so to speak, of just drinking and smoking and hanging out, 99% of those friends I had back then, I don't have them. Just because, for one, I can't show up like that. I got to be present for my kids. And that lifestyle doesn't interest me anymore. But there have been quite a few things. One of the times that you and I talked, I mentioned getting into flamenco dancing and tango and salsa dancing. And you can imagine, you know, my construction friends just like, what? Now you're dancing? That's
Yeah.
like that's the worst thing you could do. And, you know, at the time I was like, you know, we're all sitting around here with a bunch of dudes drinking. Like, why would we not try to go and meet women? And where are you going to meet women? Go dancing. And
Yeah.
so that's where I was like, I'm going to go do that. And then, but they didn't want to, because they thought it, you know, would make you feminine and do all these other things. And I was like, no, you have any idea how many different women I'm dancing with every night?
Hmm.
But they didn't see it that way. Because again, I'm changing the structure, you know, I'm going outside of the family, so to speak. And so, but I just got a hard skin. It was like, well, I guess I'm just going to be friendless and just do my interests. Um, and, you know, life has a way of doing what it does. I met my wife and 2 kids and have a beautiful real estate business and run freediving on the side. And it's a great life. And had I just been sitting there, I'd be right next to my friends that are still doing those things in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, saying, you know, I'm never going to change. I'm always going to have a time for partying. Well, you should. You should change. Just change a little bit.
Hmm. Yeah. And I mean, it's not like you haven't made new friends either along the way.
Right. Yes. Right here in front of me. Yeah. Like I said,
Yeah.
it's it's one of those things that life just kind of has a way of either happening with or without you. Life can honestly care whether we're here or not. You know, the
Yeah.
trees and water and all that, they don't care. So
Yeah. They don't.
they don't care whether we're here or not. And so that's why I'm just like, you know, if something interests me, I'm going to do it. It's like yesterday I got met with another friend and I have a certification to be a stand-up paddleboard instructor now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
Just because, again, it's more water safety. It's something I'm interested
Yeah.
in. And she's a super nice person. We traded classes. She came and took my class and she said, hey, do you want to take my class? And I was like, sure. But again, I don't really have any intention of teaching stand-up paddleboarding, but I could if I wanted to. But at the same time, now I have that much water safety under my belt. And that was the chance that I was like, sure, I'll do that. I'll definitely do that for more water safety knowledge.
Yeah, that's really cool. I didn't know you can become a paddleboard instructor. I didn't know that
Yeah.
was like a thing.
I mean, and I actually learned quite a bit because I love stand-up paddleboarding. We have a lake not too far, like literally 2 miles from my house, and um, there's a lot of stuff that I was doing wrong. I, you know, I mean, for years, like most people, you're like, yeah, go rent one. You know, $20 an hour, you go out
Yeah.
there and you hammer and you just hammer away until you get tired. You go back and you're done.
Yeah.
But there are so much more efficient techniques and safety skills that I learned that I was like, holy crap, that's really cool to know. And so that's why, again, it's good. It's good to have knowledge in a bunch of different things. So,
Mhm.
like I said, find your interest and just do it,
Yeah, just literally just go and do it. And
regardless of what people say, because they're not the ones who have to deal with the consequences of 20 years down the line wishing they would have. And that's always been my fear. I don't know who said it. I just heard it the other day. I've always been more afraid of the regrets of not doing something than the regrets of doing something or
yeah.
doing something wrong. I don't remember the actual quote, but yeah, if you do something and you fail, good. Check it off the list. I'm not going to do it again. And as opposed to 20 years later, man, I wish I wonder what would happen if I would have done that. 20
Yeah.
years ago, you could have found out.
Yeah. Exactly. And there's still a lot of things that people can do,
Yeah.
at different ages,
Oh
obviously.
yeah,
I don't know
absolutely.
what like the oldest age is for free diving, but
They have a
is there like
master's
a age?
program. They have master's programs now. There are people competing in their 50s and 60s. Again, the one thing that I try to put across is it's we are engineered. Our bodies are literally in our DNA to do this activity. You know, people have been diving in the water way before there were lessons, way before it was called free diving, literally thousands of years ago. It's in our DNA to do this type of activity. We've been going into the waters for subsistence, for tools, for all kinds of things for as long as there have been literally primates to where we are today. You don't need special stuff to do this, right? And
Mhm.
so for that, just like swimming or walking, you can do it as long as you can do it. You don't have to push depth. You don't have to be a competitive freediver to have fun, to go to Cancun or to Tulum or off the coast of Spain and have fun. And that's where a lot of people get intimidated when you start putting a label on something like, oh, you're going to go freediving. You're just going to go in the water and have some fun, right?
Yeah.
Learning the safety techniques are important. That puts you in a different category. But for the most part, you're just learning how to be safe in the water, right? And just go have fun. You don't have to have an age limit. Like I said, maybe I'll compete one day in the master's programs. I think maybe a year or two ago, they just started a master's program. Of course, I could be completely wrong with that, but yeah, master's programs and everything, swimming and freediving and marathons, all kinds of stuff.
That'd be really cool to see you do that. I'd be
As
like,
long as you
yeah.
can do it, use it or lose it. That's our bodies for sure.
Yeah. And so, actually, a question that popped up because you've been on both sides of being a student and an instructor.
Mhm.
For somebody who's just getting into an activity and you do have the option of being, an instructor certified. So, for example, with paddleboarding, you were like, oh, I never really thought I would do it, but it gave you a whole different perspective on it. For somebody who, I'll just use yoga as an example because a lot of people like to go get the yoga certifications. What if they've never done yoga, but they were interested in it? Would you suggest taking a more instructor led certification program like that? Or would you just say, just try out a few classes first, see if you like it, get that experience? Like, which one do you
Yeah,
think is
so
going to be more
I
impactful?
definitely, and I have, as far as the stand up paddleboard, I've stand up paddleboard um, for years and years and years. I used to kayak with my brother. My brother got me into kayaking, and I don't have an instructor license for kayaking or anything like that, but canoeing, I've done that for years. Stand up paddleboarding, so anything that has to do with water, I've always done. And same thing with freediving. I was a freediver for easily 15 years before I started looking into being an instructor. The only reason I became an instructor was kind of stupidly, I was going to go be an instructor, get my instructor rating, come back and teach my friends how to do it. Because there's no instructors in Texas. I'm the only one that I know of. There's a few that kind of travel around, but for the most part, I'm the only instructor or freediving school in Texas. But again, I was just going to come back and teach my friends how to do this stuff so I could have buddies. Again, stupidly, all my friends were drunk rednecks, so they're not going to be in the water saving me anyway. So I just found people on Facebook and started doing stuff like that. So in that, just start doing something and then see if you like it. Like if you want to, go freediving, go to Barton Springs and go try to touch the bottom.
Mhm.
That's freediving. Anytime you don't have equipment on as far as scuba gear, you're freediving. Period. That's what it means. Free of equipment. So scuba is self-contained underwater breathing apparatus. That's what scuba means. Freediving is free of equipment, right? So you can literally do it. No fins, no snorkel, no mask, no nothing. And then depending on what you want to do, you can add a mask. No fins, just use your hands and feet. If you want to add fins, and then just go up from there. Same thing with going on a run. You don't have to run races. You don't have to do a 5K. You can literally just go for a walk and then run for one block. See if you like it, right? And then just build up from there. So all these things that I have instructor certifications for, I was already doing them because I just went, oh, that looks fun. Like doing salsa and tango and flamenco. I had thought maybe I should teach this because it was fun. But it was just something I just thought, that looks like fun. I'm going to go try it because everybody thinks at some point, oh man, I wish I could do that. So go try it. But everybody has this elite thought of, well, I can't do it like that. Well, nobody can. Nobody's going to be Paco de Lucia on a guitar and play flamenco, and nobody's going to be, Serena Williams on the tennis court. My wife and I go play, and it's like two ducks out there. Of course, she's a lot better than I am, but I'm not trying to be an expert. But that's what stops everybody. Everybody goes, "Oh, I wish I could
Yeah.
do that." Well, go try to cook something. Nobody's going to be, Chef Ramsay right off the bat. And there's only one of him anyway. So just try something, and do it at your level. There is no reason to compare yourself to anybody doing anything, period. Because I'm only going to go as deep as I want to go that I feel comfortable with. I'm only going to run as far as I want to push myself. There's nobody next to me. And even if there is, this is the only one that I'm either battling for or against. And so, like I said, people that are scared to cook, or people that are scared to go for a run or to lift weights or ride a bike. I've never understood that. I don't understand that type of fear of doing something. It just doesn't make sense. There's too many options. There's too many ways to do something in this world. It's too easy to not sit and do nothing. It really is. But people, oh, I got work, I got kids, I got
I got excuses.
that, and
Well, we all do. Yeah, to some extent.
we have been accustomed to making our excuses so much more important. And there was another saying of, you'll find out how hard, what was it? Something about excuses of, the more you want something, the harder you'll fight for the excuses to not do it. Because people will, hey, I'm going to go on a run. Oh yeah, I was going to, I would go with you, but then I got the kids, and once I get some more time, and once I do this, and once I get the bills paid, and I'm going to go. Okay, so next year you'll have time and money to do this, because you literally just laid out a plan for like the next 6 months that you're busy. Because I just said I'm going to go on a run, and then you start stacking on excuses why you're not going up. I don't.
I mean, I'm still going.
It's like, so don't go, man. But it's funny how many, and I do it with different things as well. My wife can tell you with folding laundry, I'm really good at washing, I'm really good at drying, but getting them out of the basket, folded and put away, that's where it stops. I don't know how, but everybody got something. So.
Yeah, you got bills to pay when
I
like
gotta pay. I
laundry's.
gotta answer emails.
Yeah.
I got stuff going on. I can't be folding. I can't be folding clothes. So,
Right. But it's just that. It's just like, just go and explore, go take a class and
yeah,
just go be a student and be open to learning and being
yeah,
vulnerable and asking questions. And remember that a lot of these people that we see that are, performing something very proficiently and we consider them experts and pros, it's like, remember that they have dedicated an innumerable amount of hours
Exactly.
training and
Yeah.
failing and then continuing to push themselves and just constantly
Mhm.
going, "Okay, I could do this, I could do this," or maybe even have had points of injury or have given up
Absolutely.
on things. Like they have their own journey. They have
Mhm.
had their own challenges to go through. So I think that's something that a lot of people need to remember. That's something I have to constantly remind myself of is like, man, I want to be like as good as that person and this and that. And I'm always looking for like the best person in the room so I can learn from them because it's
Right.
like they clearly have time under their belt. So
Yeah.
let me observe what it is that they're doing. Let me like observe their movements or their techniques. What is it that they do to prepare? Oh, they're stretching before they start getting into this. Maybe I should start stretching too and see how that changes things or,
Yeah.
you know, just observing more, but realizing like, hey, I'm not going to be performing as well as this person who's been doing this activity for like 10, 15, 20
Mhm.
years or whatever, but I'm going to put myself in the position where I can learn from them and give myself grace and compassion for stumbling about and asking like silly or naive questions. I
Mhm.
have like little quotes up for people who can't see that,
Right.
but that,
Yeah,
like you
and
said
you'll when
earlier,
you
they're
yeah
not
you get
silly.
yeah when you ask people questions, sometimes you'll get a snipey remark. Not everybody's going to be
Some people, yeah.
compassionate and answer you, but at the same time, if you just try anything, going on a walk or going on a run or riding your bike or lifting weights or painting a picture or cooking something, anytime you try something, your brain appreciates it. You're building new neurons, you're building new connections, but at the same time, you gain such an appreciation for those people who can do these amazing things that, like my best depth right now at 47 meters. Alexi is at 133 meters. Right? So I would do my absolute best dive. I would have to do that almost 3 times to get what he did, right? And for me to understand what it's like to go, beyond 100 feet or 150, and to know that he's going close to 450,
Yeah, that's
that is
crazy.
mind-boggling. But you don't appreciate how much work it takes to do that. And it gives you some relief to go, yeah, I'm not going to devote that much time to that. I like my little piece of the world. One of my things I can't tell you how many times I've watched Gordon Ramsay cook a beef Wellington. And I would, it just looks like the coolest thing to do. But there's so much time that it would take to make something like that. But it's one of those things where I just appreciate watching them do that because I know, again, from doing all these things, you just gain such an appreciation for people who have the time, who have the patience. The one thing that people don't realize about training in general, regardless if you're playing guitar or running a marathon or freediving, it's actually really boring a lot of times to put in the miles to do stuff, right? And that's a lot of times when you're just doing scales on a guitar, it's boring. When you're on the road and you just can't break your mind loose, it's boring. When you're doing really long swims, it's kind of boring to just do this repetitive thing over and over and over. But that's what those greats like Michael Phelps and like, Michael Jordan and these guys that are just, you know, completely, Shirley Muldowney, this lady who was a racer for a really long time, who just, like you said, put countless hours into these things. I mean, if you can get just a glimpse by trying it, your appreciation for that activity just goes through the roof because you know what it takes to compete at that level. But again, you can give yourself some grace by going, that is amazing. I'm never going to put that much time into it, but that's so cool that they can and they do that. Great for
Yeah.
humanity, but I'm never going to do that. And so that's where the grace came in for me with freediving to know I don't need to push depth because, for one, to be a record holder is not something that I want to do. At the same time, my kids are where my energy is. And so I
Mhm.
have the grace to go, man, that's really great that you do that. People go, how deep did you go? I'm not worried about that. because
Yeah.
I know what it takes to devote that much time to do that, and I'm just not going to. You know? And then allowing yourself the pause to go, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to. You can just have your little piece of the world and be okay with what you're doing. And I'm completely happy and content with what's going on here. And that's, you know, something I never thought I would get to, you know, if you look back at me in my construction days. But again, through all these different activities, to know the time and effort and all that to put into it. And now you just go, yeah, it's fun to not have that pressure of, oh, I got to go on a run, or I got to do this, or I got to do that. I don't got to do anything. I just got to
Yeah.
smile and love my kids. That's it. That's my gotta these days.
Yeah. And that's like such an important factor to realize as well, is that you go through these activities, but you learn about yourself and what it is that you
Absolutely.
want to do. And there are some people who are going to be like, this is the only thing I'm ever committed to ever. And they do want to be an expert and they can be an expert. There are
Mm-hmm.
people who are great like that. But then there are others where, I think that's like similar to you and I, at least like I fluctuate through different activities because I love to learn about all those different concepts. And as I continue to do that, not only do I expand out on my community and the people that I meet and on the skill sets, but it's like, yeah, just the different types of skills and things that you learn within your own mind and body, they begin to complement one another in
Yeah,
different ways. And so it's like, yeah, just expand out, try different things. And like you noted, if you really love something, great, go for it. If you have the time and dedication to put into it. But if not, it's like, just do it out of the enjoyment of it. You don't have to be an expert in anything. You can just learn how to read yourself and be like, what can I give out,
right. And
and
people
how much.
forget. We also forget the periphery of things, right? So the
Mhm.
fact that I met you and you're my friend now, and the fact that I met my friend Melody, who taught me how to be an instructor for stand-up paddleboarding, the fact that one of my best friends, who I call a brother, I met through my freediving class. All these things wouldn't have happened if I were not a freedive instructor. But
Yeah.
if I also didn't account for those things, all of the stuff in the periphery, all the friends that I've made, all the contacts that I've made, all the good times that I've had, the people who have impacted my life, that's all the stuff that matters, right? The goal oriented stuff, like trying to be the best, you kind of get narrow focused and you miss the periphery of what's actually happening. All the people that are helping you. Because Michael Phelps didn't do it by himself. Shirley Muldowney didn't do it by
Mhm.
herself. Tanya Streeter, Alexei Molchanov, they all have these teams behind them of people, whether they appreciate them or not, that either allow them to do these things, help them to do these things, or are bridges for them to accomplish their goals. But we do things together. Anybody that's like, I did this, you're like, you didn't. You didn't. Because if you're doing it by yourself, you'd be out in the woods by yourself doing pretty much nothing. But this periphery that we miss because we're looking at this one spot, there's like this pyramid of people around us that we all really genuinely want to help each other. I firmly believe that, and we get enjoyment out of helping others. And so I really, really love it when somebody reaches the plate for the very first time, and it's 10 meters, it's 30 feet for a vast majority of freedivers. 10 meters is not a big deal, but for me, it's a huge deal every single time somebody does it because it's such an accomplishment, and I was able to facilitate that for them and to be allowed to be a part of their journey, whether they ever freedive again. That's the pieces that I look forward to. Um, and so, but again, it's all the periphery, hanging out with friends, at the table while we're diving, and seeing people I haven't seen in like literally years, having students come back when I have open swims, and um, that's that's the periphery of what one goal could give. I just wanted to be an instructor, but now I have this wealth of friends and family that I would have had otherwise. Count my blessings every day with everything that freediving and construction and just appreciating in general has brought into my life.
Yeah. And yeah, and then that's all really important is just gratitude.
Yeah.
To be able to say like, wow, my body is functioning. I can get up every day and move around. I can breathe. I can, eat a meal easily. Like, there are so many people that have different types of challenges in their lives. And, there's even more people who don't have those challenges and they don't necessarily appreciate what it is that they have. They don't think about it. And until you're put into that situation, you're like, oh man, I really wish I did take advantage of this and that more before this challenge came into my life. So it's,
Yeah.
yeah, really appreciating gratitude and being like, man, I'm grateful that I do have, very supportive friends and instructors and the resources to do this or a library where I can actually go and get free information. Like I don't have to spend money on resources. The library, I'm always like, guys, go check the library out. It's so cool. Like they have
Yeah.
videos now. The one here in Austin, they have a 3D printer. Like
Yeah.
they have like like a bunch of really cool things that you can just go and learn for free,
Right.
and yeah, you find the right people, you can go and learn from them for free, it
Absolutely.
helps. But yeah, is there anything else that you would wanna say or, any types of pieces of information or tips or words of the wise that you'd like to share
If
with
you
folks?
have any interest in freediving,
Mhm.
go to a local pool, play around in the water, have fun. Try to find some deep ends somewhere 10, 12 feet. Barton Springs is like 16 to 18 feet. Go hang out there.
Mhm. A
If you
lot of
have any
cool fish.
questions, email me, freedivingtexas@gmail.com. I'm very accessible. I try to get back to emails within 48 hours. Um, but biggest thing is take a class. It doesn't have to be for me, but it's very important if you are going to be pushing depth a little bit or trying to go on a trip to Cancun and go do some spearfishing and or go play around at a shipwreck. Know what your body's doing, know how to do it better and more efficiently, and reach out. freedivingtexas@gmail.com. And that's it. Have fun. Be safe.
Yeah. And I definitely suggest checking out his course. Again, that's how I met him. I really loved it. I love your teaching style because you were very empathetic to all of your students and you did take the time to understand what our goals were and what some of the limitations were, challenges were. And yeah, you're making this like a community for us here in Texas. And I really appreciate that because you're spearheading something new that a lot of folks have not yet done, clearly,
Yeah.
because you're like the sole instructor here
Yeah.
for it. So I really appreciate that you're doing that and you're allowing many of us to just try something new and extend out our skill sets and just push our boundaries. So yeah, I definitely recommend it for anybody who's in Texas or you're flying through Texas to check out his course. I'd say it's really awesome. Like I really
Very
loved
cool.
it.
Great.
Yeah. And so with that, I want to thank you, Philip, so much for your time, so much for, just everything that you've shared with us on this. And I really hope that some people have been able to open up their minds to the activity and maybe some other activities as well. But I really appreciate you for just spending the time with me and just
Yeah.
chatting and shooting the shit. Like it was a lot of
Yeah.
fun.
Thank you for asking me for this. This is very fun. Very fun to do.
Yeah.
You're an easy
And
person to talk to.
oh, well, that's good. Well, I appreciate that too. And so, for our listeners, thank you again for all of your time. I really appreciate you as well. And until next time, have a great day. Have a good one.